Today, my title, the series is about validation, and my title is Trendy and Validated. Trendy and validated. I looked up, nowadays, I don't know who goes to the dictionary anymore, but my dictionary is Google. And I looked up definitions for validation. And they had like 3 of them. Of course, I only picked out the one that I actually wanted to get and that I needed. And this one actually says that validation is recognition or affirmation that a person or their feeling or opinions are valid or worthwhile. Validation is recognition or affirmation that a person or their feeling or opinions are valid or worthwhile. So, as human beings, validation is one of the core needs that we all need. We all look to that. We all look to acceptance. The very first acceptance you'll ever get is from your family members, from your parents. Usually from conception to birth to, as you grow and all that stuff. You guys know, most of you I'm pretty sure know, the famous scene of The Lion King, where Simba is born, and then, all the living creatures of the kingdom come up to see the new prince that is born. And even, they lift him up, and even the heavens basically part and smile on him. And that was just a moment, a little picture of the acceptance from his father, from his mother, and from the kingdom that the newborn got. And everybody normally is supposed to get some type of acceptance from their families, from their societies, right? We're supposed to be accepted by our tribes, or our cultures, or our hoods, our neighborhoods, wherever you come from, wherever you've grown up. And eventually it gets to a legal state, right? Eventually it grows into things that are more legal, things that are more formal. You get to like the recognition, the state recognizes you, your country recognizes you.
That's right.
Right? And usually what we do is we compete for our countries. Why? Because we want to be recognized by our countries, but also we want other countries to recognize our country through us, right? To a certain extent, because we represent where we've come from. And validation then is actually, like I said, it's at the core of our development, of how we grow up, right? When you're growing as a kid and into your adulthood, it really, really does play a big part into how healthy you become, how you view life, right? And how you go about life. So when you have a good and solid foundation, it helps you actually become a healthier person. Your chances of being a healthier person in how you think, in how you do things, in how you treat people are a lot higher, a lot better, right? But people who have been neglected from birth, people who have been rejected from birth, people who have been abused when they were kids, right? That sense of the respect for you has been kind of damaged. To a certain extent, you can't really grow up like a normal person, right? And so when people look at you, you want to feel like you belong somewhere, right? You want to feel like you belong to your country. I remember one time I had this, it was a couple of years ago, I was talking to somebody who just met, and I was like, oh, I grew up in this area of town in my country. And they were like, oh, I grew up there, but I didn't see you. I never, I didn't know you. I'm like, what you talking about? Like, I grew up there. Like, we had a soccer team. At some point, I was even the captain of that team, and like, it was a big deal. We actually made it on TV once, and I was so happy. Like, they showed me for like not even 2 seconds, but the feeling I had at the time, like I actually felt like I was in the Champions League. For those of you guys who know what I'm talking about. That was a big deal to me. At the time, I think I was 12 years old. So it really meant everything to me. But why did I feel the need to start arguing with this person who I just met about where I'm from, right? Because we all desire a sense, we have a sense of wanting to belong somewhere. You want to belong somewhere. You want to be recognized for this place. You want to show them that, hey, I know this area, I know that area, I know these people. All that as proof that you've been there, that you were there, that you grew up there, and that you deserve to be recognized by those people. And so I want to take you guys on a little. We're gonna kind of circle through the Bible a little bit, but I wanted to take you guys onto my first point, actually, which is recognize toxic environments. Recognize toxic environments. In case you're taking notes, hopefully you are. Toxic environments make you feel like you have to prove yourself instead of allowing you to just be yourself, right? So sometimes, what I mean by that is this, like, sometimes you might, I don't know if you've ever had this before, but I've actually had people around me who growing up, again, you know, when I was growing up, I was actually always one of the smallest guys, like shortest, skinniest, and I remember at some point, I was probably like 9 or 10 years old, and I was just so tired of, like, because in my class, it was always, you know, people the same age or whatever, but I was always the smallest, the shortest, so I was always looked at as the kid, and they used to wonder, like, if I had skipped a grade or what. But to me, like, I wanted to, like, feel like I'm just one of the cool people. I belong there. I deserve to be there. I deserve to be treated like someone at their level. They shouldn't talk down to me like a kid. And you know, I think it might be a bit of a culture difference for some who might have grown up in different places. But where I come from, being a kid isn't really the cool thing. Like, being a grown-up is actually the cool thing, you know. And so when they talk to you like you're a kid, you're like, no, I'm grown. You know, you wanna show that you actually can do and say all the things that they're doing or saying, right? And so that was me. At some point, I remember I was like, man, like, from first grade all the way to 5th grade, I've always been like the second shortest, like, in the whole class, and smallest. And I was like, I remember praying, I was like, God, please help me at least be like as tall as my dad, like one day, you know, like, that was my actual prayer. Because at some point, like, to me, when I was being looked down to, right, it was this thing, like, people didn't even pay attention to what I had to say. People didn't actually think, hey, this guy might actually have a valid point. He's smart, you know. We might actually trust him with this little thing or this one thing. They didn't even give me a chance to do anything. The only time that they trusted me was in sports. Now, I had some speed while playing soccer and all that stuff, and I really proved myself while playing. But that was really about the only time, you know. And so there are times where we need to learn what type of environments we're in. Is that environment helping you grow? Or is that environment just exploiting you? Are they just using your presence because they want to feel like they got a crowd? Because some people are just about status and just about having followers. Why is social media popping nowadays?
Followers. I have 2.
Mr. Jonathan says he only has 2 followers. Which I know is an absolute lie. Which, by the way, speaking about lies, you know, there's a lot of lies this man tells on out here about the people that, you know, he hangs out with and stuff. I'm trying to reel back towards what he has said before and try to, but anyways, I don't have a list for those of you guys who were here that day. But anyways, going back to what I was saying.
Didn't catch that.
Hey, those who weren't here didn't catch it. But I was I wanted to take you guys to Genesis chapter 37, verse 1, and we're going to kind of blaze through to verse 11. Genesis 37. Yeah, sometimes you gotta clear your rep. You know, you can't let nobody mess you up like
Too
that.
late.
Come on, man. It's like it's too late. All right, Genesis 37. It says it's the story of Joseph. It says, now Jacob dwelt in the land where his father was a stranger in the land of Canaan. But this is the story of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was feeding the flock with his brothers, and the lad was with the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought a bad report of them to his father. Let's just say he probably wasn't that wise. Now Israel loved Joseph more than all his children, because he was the son of his old age. Also he made him a tunic of many colors. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peaceably to him. Excuse me. Now Joseph had a dream, and he told it to his brothers, and they hated him even more. So he said to them, please hear this dream, which I have dreamed. There we were, binding sheaves in the field, and then behold, my sheaf arose and also stood upright. And indeed your sheaves stood all around and bowed down to my sheaf. And his brothers said to him, shall you indeed reign over us? Or shall you indeed have dominion over us? So they hated him even more for his dreams and his words. Then he dreamed still another dream, and told it to his brothers, and said, look, I have dreamed another dream. And this time the sun and the moon and the 11 stars bowed down to me. So he told it to his father and his brothers, and his father rebuked him and said to him, what is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall your mother and I and your brothers indeed come to bow down to the earth before you? And his brothers envied him, but his father kept the matter in mind. I wanted to highlight, number one, Joseph was young, but he wasn't wise. You need to assess your environment. Know whether or not the people around you actually care about you, for you to actually share important things to them so you can get their acceptance. Know who you're talking to. Know your environment. Why? Because when there are times when before you actually get something done, that you're actually the most vulnerable. And if you start speaking out about some things a little too early, they might crush your momentum. They might crush your hope for the vision that you have. It's up to you to be wise enough to know who you're talking to and who's in your circle. The problem here is that the very people that he was supposed to trust, that were supposed to protect him, that were supposed to shield him, were the very people who actually were jealous of him. And who, like I said, it was a very toxic situation. Why? Because it said that they hated him, and they just kept on hating him, and kept on hating him even more. Why? Because they didn't receive the same kind of favor from their dad. You could say that their dad probably didn't think too much of them. But I want to highlight this one thing. These people were grown men with families, and they were shepherds. And at the time, yeah, I get it, there wasn't too much to do. But I will tell you that these people were not actually living out their visions and their calling. And so when this guy, this young kid, finally gets a dream that seems like some type of potential, it threatens their pride. And guess what? Now they turn into enemies. Right? So that's why I'm saying sometimes the vision that you have, sometimes the things that God is showing you on the inside, you probably want to protect them for a while longer and actually assess your crowd. Are these people actually going to listen to you? Because imagine if I was to tell my friends back then when I was growing up and tell them, hey, you know, God has shown me this, or hey, I want to be this, you know, eventually in life. Do you really think that these people would have actually encouraged me and cheered me on and said, yeah, man, you can do it? So, you know what I mean? Like, if I, well, number one, at the time I didn't even know what dream I had, but, you know, it's one of those things that if you're not careful with who you share sensitive information to, it can definitely hurt you. So,
Right.
Another case is David, the story of David. You guys can read the story of David when you have time. It's in 1 Samuel. Actually, let's go there real quick because it's only a couple verses that I wanted to highlight. 1 Samuel 16 and verse 1. That's where we'll start. 1 Samuel 16, verse 1. It says, now the Lord said to Samuel, how long will you mourn for Saul, seeing I have rejected him from reigning over Israel? Fill your horn with oil and go. I am sending you to Jesse the Bethlehemite, for I have provided myself a king among his sons. You skip over to verse 11 and 12, where eventually Samuel gets to their place, and they're all together. And Samuel says to Jesse, the father, are all the young men here? Now, he had already presented him the young men, his sons. You know, Samuel said, hey, show me your sons. And he presumably brought all his sons. So each one of them walked right in front of him and was presented to him to be anointed as king. But here we go, and it says that Samuel asked Jesse, are all your young men here? Then he said, there remains yet the youngest, and there he is keeping the sheep. How do you forget one of your own kids? How do you neglect one of your own kids that bad? That when someone who has a status in the country, Samuel was a prophet that actually was seeing kings. And when someone like that comes into town and says, hey, I want to break bread with you guys, I want to actually sit down with you guys, but I want your whole family together, how do you forget one of your kids? The reason why I picked this one was because I wanted to show you the difference between, the difference that validation can make. David was never validated, never recognized or accepted really fully by his father. But that was the difference between him and Joseph. Joseph's father actually loved him, right? And the cool thing is that Joseph usually used to have dreams as well. So he understood that God can speak to you through dreams. And so when he saw these specific dreams that his son had, he didn't understand them. He was scared of them. But he did not disregard them completely. The Bible says he kept that matter in his mind. He considered it, right? He considered it, unlike being completely forgotten, unlike being completely ignored. So how do you think that affected both of them? Let's fast forward into their lives. Joseph, 13 years later, gets appointed by, not before that, his brothers sell him into slavery in Egypt, and then eventually, fast forward, he gets appointed to be just right underneath the Pharaoh and be in charge of a lot of things. David, at that time, is called up and becomes the one who is anointed to be the next king. You fast forward, and eventually he becomes the king, right? But I want to show you that, I want to tell you that their lives we're so affected by the lack of validation for one and the actual having validation in the other that for Joseph, who was validated, his life afterwards was smooth. You don't hear that Joseph had problems. But when you talk about David, if you want to make, see, if anybody's trying to get into Hollywood, these people are really cheating themselves out of money. Because if you really want to make money, just tell the story of David as it is. And you're going to make money. Why? Because you got all types of scandals. You got all types of scandals. I mean, betrayal. You got adultery. You got murder. You got all types of things. You got like daddy issues. You got someone who's like literally being chased to be murdered. I mean, literally, if you want to make money, just tell the story as is. It's just as simple as that, you know. But I wanted to say that being validated by people is a problem. Stop looking for validation from others. Because a lot of them, most of the time, are not even healthy.
Yeah.
A lot of them are selfish at times. It depends. Hopefully you've actually chosen your crowd correctly. But if you haven't, I hope you know who you're around and who's around you, right? Because if you don't, listen, you're going to get hurt just trying to prove yourself all the time. You're going to get hurt just exposing your dreams and your purpose way too early. You're going to get hurt. And so I wanted to say that the number one validation that we are supposed to look for is validation from God himself.
Yep.
Because if you're not validated by God, if you're not accepted by God, if God himself doesn't put his stamp on you and on your life and on your purpose, listen, you can try on your own. You can do some things on your own. I'm not going to say that you won't be successful. But I'm going to tell you that it's going to be very different when God puts his stamp on your life.
That's good.
It's completely different. And
Amen.
if you really want to see the changes, if you really want to see how different it is, just follow the whole story of Joseph.
That's good.
Joseph was someone who was a slave in a land that was not his.
Wow.
Talk about all the odds being against you to make it. And you wonder, like, how am I going to change this world? How am I going to, how is, you know, the moon and the stars going to bow to me? That doesn't make sense. Who is going to, like, actually listen to me, to what I have to say? And God says, you know what? Just because you're mine, let me take care of this.
Amen.
Because what
That's
you
good.
can do, you know, you could be as righteous as you want to be. He was very righteous in Potiphar's house. But he was lied about. Sometimes we go through things, we're doing our best on our own.
Yeah.
But we can't really get to where God wants us to be.
That's good.
So I wanted to go to point number 2, which is trendy, but not enslaved to trends. Matthew chapter 19 is really what I want to get to. Matthew 19, verse 16, and I'm going to try to blaze through real quick to 30. Okay? Matthew 19, if you're not there yet, 16 to 30. So it says, "Now behold, one came and said to him, 'Good teacher, what good thing shall I do that I may have eternal life?' So he said to him, 'Why do you call me good? No one is good but one, that is God. But if you want to enter into life, keep the commandments.' He said to him, 'Which ones?' Jesus said, 'You shall not murder, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not steal, you shall not bear false witness, honor your father and your mother, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself.' The young man said to him, 'All these things I have kept from my youth. What do I still lack?' Jesus said to him, 'If you want to be perfect, go sell what you have and give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven, and come follow me.' But when the young man heard that saying, he went away sorrowful, for he had great possessions." I want to stop there. what I wanted to focus on in this one was, do the things that you have own you?
Hmm.
Wow.
In life, we look, these trends that we got today, there's so much I could say about these trends, but I want to say, for the most part, you look at social media, you look at how we're living nowadays. The world is changing. Social media is becoming our culture nowadays. Have you guys noticed that? Like, social media has slowly started to change how we interact with each other.
Sure.
There's some things, like, again, where I come from, there's some things that I couldn't do with my parents. And, but nowadays, I see some kids, they're actually influencing the parents to do some stuff. Like recording a video with you. But I'm like, yo, okay, that's cool. But, maybe it's just because some things have changed and have been updated nowadays. Cameras are everywhere. Everybody can, record or whatever. But then you got, parents seem to be loosening up a lot more. I don't know if it's just me. Is it just me?
No.
Right. So it's like, sometimes I'm like, yo, what's going on? Like, I saw this challenge, I don't know why she's laughing. I saw this challenge that is on, it was trending on social media. Like, there's something new challenge where, people are dancing or whatever, and then, it was usually families or friends who are dancing and together. It's like they're lined up, and then this specific one was an African dad who had, some clothes wrapped around him. And he was actually, he was dancing but rolling his hips and all that stuff, and the kids were behind him just cracking up. And I'm like, yo, there's some things that wouldn't even cross my mind to ask my parents to do that kind of thing with me, right? Like, it's not even, I think it's just the way that the trends have kind of changed our cultures. Slowly, we're moving into a new direction. And this rich young man, if he lived today, I think, he'd probably be like a billionaire, right? Or somebody who, we know kind of like the billionaire lifestyle you look at nowadays. Some of them take their trips, their vacations. They're on their own private jets. They do whatever they want. They're on a beach somewhere in Zanzibar or whatever, or any other place that you really want to think about. If we were to think about where he'd be at today, with the fact that he's got all that money brings status, status brings followers, his IG account would have definitely been verified. Those are things that are, I don't have to question that. But, I wonder, this guy had it all. Like, he had the money, he had the status, and yet, he was still looking for things, to keep on moving up and up his status, right? And I wanted to, excuse me, I wanted to say that, this man, though, unfortunately, his possessions owned him. It was so much so that it actually influenced how far he wanted to get with God. And why do I say that they owned him? I think I mentioned before, we got to watch out with our souls. Like, once our emotions are tied to something, it becomes really hard for us to detach from it. And the problem is with this person, he actually loved his possessions. Why? Because when he heard from Jesus that he had to sell everything he owned, the Bible is specific and it said he went away sorrowful. He actually hurt in his heart. He was like, man, do I really gotta sell all this? I really thought I could get to this point. I really thought I could, reach this status. I really thought I could do this, and I really thought I could do this and that. But I know for a fact that until God means everything to you, there's some things that you won't, there's things that you'll get yourself into, but you still won't have God's stamp on those projects. Maybe on your life, maybe on your purpose. A lot of us are chasing things that men want, right? That man wants. Like we're chasing status, we're chasing money, we're chasing all types of things that people want. But what does God say about them? Do those things actually enslave you now to where you're consistently trying to update your status, you're consistently trying to update your story, you're consistently trying to buy a house, you're consistently trying to change a car, like you change a car every single year, you change your phone every 3 months to show that you got the latest stuff. Like, what are you chasing?
Validation.
I think a lot of us don't think about these things, but I think if you slow down enough to think, if you slow down enough to listen to yourself, which a lot of people don't do nowadays.
No.
You know the dangers of not listening to yourself is that you'll find out eventually at some point that all along you've been running and doing all these things, but it wasn't really coming from you. It was because you wanted to be accepted by somebody else. You wanted to be accepted by this person. And you wanted to prove that one person that messed you up and that said you were nothing, you wanted to prove to them that you could do this and that you could do that. But what about what God says? Because He's the one with the master plan. And His plan is actually better. I don't think anybody else has a better plan for your life than He does. Why are we looking to plan B, C, D, all the way to Z first before we look to plan A?
Come on, Joe.
I don't like to waste my time, really. I really don't. And I don't think, this life, we don't have much time on earth. We don't. We're here today, we're gone tomorrow. Seriously. And for some of us, there's a lot of big things that we can do. But we don't realize that. And we're still playing, we're still chilling, we're just wasting our time. And that's one thing that I'm like, yo, you cannot waste the time that you have today. Get on to what God is asking you to do. Because if you don't, listen, time does not rewind, it does not pause, it's not going to wait for you.
No.
It's not going to wait for you. And that's the scariest thing about reality. I thank God we got inspirations like Chadwick Boseman, we got inspirations like Kobe Bryant, but you look at their lives, they really were chasing their purpose.
Yes.
Their lives were cut short, but you look at the importance of their lives,
Right.
and you're like, dang man, we really lost some people.
Mm.
Like even there's older people who we've lost over time, but you look at their lives and you're like, man, like imagine living life like this person. We need inspirations like that in life. And I want to get to my last point, which is validation. That there is validation that makes your enemies bow. I think a lot of the time nowadays, the issue is that a lot of us, again, like I was saying, we're running after trends and all these other things only. It is not a problem, it is not a bad thing for us to be trendy. It's not a problem. Do all those things. Do the challenges that you want to do, that you see on social media that are cool and that are good. Just beware, there's other challenges I'm probably going to see. I don't know if I should mention them.
No, we're good.
But beware and know what you're doing, but understand that what you're doing, use your platform, your status, what you have, who you are, for the right reasons. Don't waste your time. You don't have much time. I don't have much time, And in Genesis 42, verse 5 and 6 is where we see the first time. So after Joseph has been sold, and now he went, he became a slave, then he got thrown in prison, then eventually got brought to the palace as a governor, right, of this place. And then eventually there's a famine that comes, and his family from Israel is forced to come to Egypt to buy grain from them. and he's in charge of it all, and they have to bow to him because they don't even know who this dude is. They're just respecting the person because he's in charge, and they need bread because they're going to die if they don't have any. And I think, I can't fully remember, I believe that they had to bow 4 times to him. And that dream that he had was actually fulfilled. And it was a sign that no matter what happens in your life, even if the people you were supposed to trust, the people who are supposed to cover you, don't actually cover you, don't actually protect you, and throw you to the wolves, basically, and you don't see how you're going to get to the promise that God had for you. Even if you don't see any of that, God is still faithful enough to change things because he's the king. He owns the earth, and he can turn any situation however he wants to. Joseph one day went to bed a prisoner, a slave, woke up, and by the end of the day was a governor. He was second in command of a whole kingdom.
Right.
That kind of stuff, that kind of elevation does not happen by just regular human beings. You can't up your status like that. It's not possible. But only God can do that kind of thing. But how do we get to that? Jesus said in Matthew chapter 6, if you guys want, you can read the chapter yourselves. But he says multiple times, he talks about the secret place. He says, there are things that you need, that you desire, that you seek. He says, when you pray, your Father who sees in secret, your Father who sees what's in your heart, the things that nobody else can see, he will reward you, right? And so the issue today is that we're looking for validation from all these other people. We're running and chasing this status, and we want to have all these followers. We want to be verified on IG, and we want to do all these other things. You want to look cool. You want to have the latest whatever shoes and whatever, whatever type clothing you want to pick, right? And all these things that we do, but we're trying to get approval from people and not really from God first. It's not bad to get approval from people if it's healthy. Make sure it's healthy. But number one, it has to be coming from God. 2, it has to come from yourself.
Amen.
You have to accept yourself. You have to understand that what you carry is different. It might not look like what you want from so-and-so, but it's completely different, and it actually is powerful. It means something. It's there for a reason. It's not to be thrown away. And the thing is, God will never forget you or neglect you like Jesse forgot his own son. Jesus said, and he gave us the secret. He said, when you pray. Eventually later he said, when you fast. He keeps saying, listen, there's a place, there's a way that you can get the things that you would never get from other people. That is when you take time with God, one-on-one. When you don't get distracted by all these other things, whether it's your job, whether it's social media, whether it's all these other things. When you focus and look to God and say, God, I'm coming to you for this. I got so many examples that I could give you guys, but we're running out of time. And I just wanted to say that there is no, being validated comes from, you have to also be satisfied within yourself. And a lot of people are not satisfied on the inside with themselves, with who they are. And they want the approval of somebody else. Listen, that's not going to heal you. You're looking for healing, probably. You're looking for acceptance, possibly. That's not going to heal you. It's not going to up your status. And it might for a split second, but the issue is it really, really benefiting you? Or is it actually taking you away from your purpose? Is it another distraction that's going to take you years to figure out, oh shoot, I wasted my time? What Jesus promises, though, is that when you seek God in a secret place, most things that you are asking Him, as you wait, don't be discouraged. He promises that he will give those to you. I want to finish by saying that there is nothing wrong with being trendy. Jesus didn't want us to be behind. Let's not be like the Christians that used to be so close-minded that, you know, I love my Bible. It's a study Bible. It's a big Bible. But, you know, I grew up seeing people who, everywhere they go, everywhere they go, whether you're at school, whether you're at work, whether you're at the market,
Party.
at a party. No, parties were sinful. Please, parties are sinful. You know? So, that is, you know, but please make sure that no matter what you do, that you don't forget to spend that time with God. Those one-on-ones with God. It's very important. That's where your power comes from.
Amen.
Don't forget that part, because if you do, the world will never fully deliver.
That's right.
That is a promise. But I can promise you that if you want the type of favor that Daniel had, study the story of Daniel. Daniel was a man who not only did he trust in God fully, but he also was an excellent person. He applied himself. He worked hard. And you look at his life. He was also a slave who eventually got to the palace. And his life was good. Why? Because God literally changed his life and put his stamp on what he was doing. And nobody, even if they tried him, they tried to throw him to the lions. The same people who tried to throw him to the lions are the ones who got eaten by the lions. And guess what? The Bible says the lions didn't even wait for them to fall from into the pit. They jumped in midair to catch them because they were actually waiting to eat them up. Listen, your enemies got no chance if God puts a stamp on what you do.
Oh, yeah.
Amen.
Stand strong and keep God first.